The billionaire's mansion was silent, until his mute son whispered one word that changed everything. The nanny froze. Her heart raced as the little boy clung to her and said, "Mommy." But what happened next, no one could have imagined. Was this a miracle, or the beginning of a heartbreaking truth? Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And don't skip a single second of this story, because what happens in the end will leave you speechless. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows of the Carter mansion, throwing soft golden light across the gleaming marble floors. It was quiet, too quiet for a home that should have been filled with laughter. Elena Davis adjusted the straps of her simple floral dress as she waited at the massive oak doors, clutching her small leather bag nervously. She wasn't sure why she'd been called here. A week ago, she had been a teaching assistant at a small inner-city daycare. Now she was about to work for a billionaire. The door swung open, revealing a man in a sharp suit, his dark hair perfectly in place and his expression unreadable. "You're Elena?" he asked briskly. "Yes, sir." "Elena Davis," she said, forcing a polite smile. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." His voice was deep, formal. "I'm Adrian Carter." She nodded. Everyone knew Adrian Carter, CEO of Carter Enterprises, one of the richest men in the state. His face was on magazine covers, always paired with headlines about his business deals or his tragedy. He stepped aside to let her in, and she followed him into a vast living room that seemed cold despite its expensive furnishings. The room was immaculate, too immaculate, like no one lived there. Adrian motioned toward the couch. "Please sit." She perched on the edge, clutching her bag tighter. "My son, Leo?" "He's 5, Adrian began. His voice faltered for a moment, and she noticed the shadows under his eyes. "He hasn't spoken a word since his mother passed away 2 years ago. The doctors call it trauma-induced mutism." Elena's heart ached. She didn't know much about Adrian Carter's personal life, but she remembered hearing about the car accident that had taken his wife. She glanced around but didn't see a child anywhere. "I've tried therapists, special schools, speech experts," Adrian continued. "Nothing's worked. He barely interacts with anyone anymore." He rubbed his forehead. "I need someone patient. Someone who can reach him, if anyone can." Elena swallowed hard. "I'll do my best, Mr. Carter." A flicker of something hope maybe crossed his face. "Thank you." He led her up a wide staircase to the second floor and paused at a door painted a soft blue. "Leo's in here," Adrian said quietly. "He doesn't like strangers, so don't be surprised if he hides." Elena nodded. "I'll be gentle." Adrian opened the door and Elena stepped into a child's bedroom. It was beautiful, decorated with colorful murals of animals and clouds. Toys were neatly arranged on shelves, but none looked played with. Near the window sat a small boy with chestnut curls, staring blankly outside. He clutched a worn stuffed rabbit so tightly its ears were bent. "Leo," Adrian said softly. "This is Miss Elena. She's here to spend time with you." The boy didn't move, didn't even blink. Adrian sighed. "I'll give you two some space." When the door closed, Elena knelt on the carpet a few feet from the boy. "Hi, Leo," she said softly. "I'm Elena. Can I sit with you?" No response. She waited, giving him time to get used to her presence. Then she took a small toy car from the shelf and gently rolled it across the carpet toward him. "It's okay if you don't want to talk yet," she said. "We can just sit quietly." For almost an hour she stayed there, speaking softly about nothing in particular. She told him about her favorite books as a child, about the silly dog she used to have, about the flowers growing outside. At one point, she thought she saw his fingers twitch slightly around the stuffed rabbit. But then he curled in on himself again, hugging the toy tightly. Elena's heart ached as she watched him. He looked so small, so fragile, like he was carrying the weight of the world. When Adrian returned, Elena stood. He didn't speak, but I think he listened, she said gently. Adrian nodded. That's more than most people get. As Elena left the mansion that evening, she looked back at the big house and whispered to herself, I'll find a way to reach you, little one. She didn't know how yet, but something in her heart told her she couldn't give up. The next morning, Elena stood at the Carter mansion gates, clutching a small paper bag. Inside was a little surprise she hoped might soften the walls around Leo's heart. When she stepped inside, Adrian was already in his study, surrounded by paperwork. But he glanced up as she passed by. Miss Davis, he said, his voice low. Did he respond yesterday? She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Not with words, but I think he knew I was there. Adrian's eyes darkened, and he nodded. That's more than I've been able to manage. As she walked toward Leo's room, she heard a soft sound, a muffled hum, almost like someone was quietly singing. She froze at the door. Was it him? But when she peeked inside, Leo wasn't singing. He sat by the window again, clutching the same stuffed rabbit. The sound was coming from a small toy that played lullabies when pressed. Still, her heart gave a hopeful thump. Good morning, Leo, she said softly as she entered. He didn't move, didn't even glance at her. Elena took a deep breath and sat cross-legged on the floor, setting the paper bag between them. I brought something for you, she said gently. She pulled out a small pack of crayons and a blank sketch pad. Slowly, she opened the box and began coloring in the first page herself. I used to love drawing when I was your age, she said, choosing a blue crayon. My grandma always said colors can say what words can't. She glanced up. For a moment, she thought she saw the boy's eyes flick toward the crayons. But then his gaze shifted back to the window. Undeterred, she kept coloring. She sketched a smiling sun, a tree with birds, and a little boy holding a bunny. After a while, she gently pushed the crayons toward him. Do you want to try? His fingers twitched around the stuffed rabbit. Slowly, so slowly it made her heart race, he reached out one small hand and picked up a green crayon. Elena's breath caught. She didn't move, afraid any sound might break the fragile moment. Leo hesitated, then began making small, timid marks on the paper. That's wonderful, Leo, she whispered, smiling softly. You're an artist. When Adrian came to check on them an hour later, he froze in the doorway. His son was sitting on the floor beside Elena, gripping a crayon, scribbling green lines onto the page. Elena looked up and met Adrian's stunned gaze. He's drawing, she mouthed silently. Adrian's throat tightened. For months, Leo hadn't picked up a toy or engaged with anyone. Yet here he was, sitting shoulder to shoulder with this woman, making hesitant marks in a sketchpad. Leo, Adrian said softly, stepping forward. The boy stiffened, his small shoulders tensing. Elena noticed and quickly placed her hand over Leo's. It's okay, she whispered. Daddy's just saying hi. Leo didn't look up. But he didn't drop the crayon either. Adrian exhaled shakily. I don't know how you're doing this, he murmured to Elena. I'm not doing anything magical, she said softly, keeping her voice calm for Leo's sake. He just needed someone to wait with him in the silence. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. There was something in her tone, gentle but unyielding, that stirred something he hadn't felt in years. As the sun dipped lower, Elena gathered her things to leave. Goodbye for now, Leo, she said softly. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? To her surprise, Leo's fingers tightened slightly around her sleeve before letting go. It was barely a touch, but it felt like a crack in a frozen lake, small, but enough to bring tears to her eyes. As she stepped out into the cool evening air, Elena didn't notice Adrian watching her from the upstairs window. He watched the woman who had somehow lit a spark in his silent sun, and in the hollow corners of his own heart. The morning was heavy with rain. Drops tapped against the mansion windows like tiny fingertips drumming for attention. Elena paused in the foyer, shaking water from her umbrella. She glanced up the sweeping staircase, her heart tightening as she thought of Leo. Would he withdraw again today? Or would he let her sit beside him like yesterday? Before she could head up, Adrian appeared at the top of the stairs. He wasn't in his usual suit. Instead, he wore a plain sweater, his hair slightly mussed like he hadn't slept well. "Miss Davis," he called down, his voice softer than usual. Double quotes, "Yes, Mr. Carter." He hesitated, gripping the banister. "Can I speak to you for a moment? Before you see Leo?" She nodded and followed him into the study. Adrian closed the door behind them, his shoulders tight. "I don't know what you're doing with him, but—" "Thank you," he said quietly. "Yesterday, when I walked in and saw him coloring, it was the first time in years I felt like I wasn't failing him." Elena's throat tightened. "You're not failing him. Leo's been through something no child should, but he's still here. That's because of you." Adrian's lips twitched almost a smile, but not quite. "I've tried to give him everything. Doctors, therapists, toys, but—" He exhaled heavily. "Maybe what he needed was someone like you. Someone patient enough to just wait." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain pattered steadily against the window. Finally, Elena said softly, "Leo's the brave one. I'm just trying to meet him where he is." Adrian looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. There was gratitude in his eyes. And something else she couldn't quite name. A faint sound interrupted them. Thump, thump. Elena stiffened. It was coming from upstairs. "Leo," Adrian said, his face going pale. They rushed out of the study and up the stairs. At the end of the hall, Leo's door stood ajar. Inside, they found the boy curled up on the floor near his bed, his tiny fists pounding against the hardwood. His stuffed rabbit lay forgotten a few feet away. "Leo," Elena dropped to her knees beside him. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" The boy's small body shook with silent sobs. Adrian hovered in the doorway, his hands clenching. "I've never seen him like this," he murmured. Elena gently touched Leo's back. "It's okay, Leo. You're safe. I'm here." At her touch, he flinched, but then his trembling fingers clutched her sleeve. His lips moved soundlessly, like he was trying to form words that wouldn't come. "It's okay," she whispered. "Take your time." Adrian took a step forward. "Leo, but—" Leo's tiny voice broke through the room like a spark in the dark. "Mom." Elena froze. "Mom, my—" The word was barely a whisper, shaky and small, but it was there. Adrian staggered back a step, his mouth falling open. Elena's eyes brimmed with tears. "Leo, you spoke," she breathed. "You did it, sweetheart." Leo's tiny fingers gripped her tighter. "Mommy." He whimpered again, burying his face in her shoulder. Elena held him close, her tears wetting his soft curls. "Yes, baby, I'm here. I've got you." Adrian stood frozen in the doorway, his chest heaving. His son's first word in 2 years. And it wasn't daddy. It wasn't even help. It was mommy. Something inside him cracked, a raw ache spreading through his chest. Elena glanced up at him, her own cheeks wet. "He said it," she whispered. "He's trying." Adrian stepped forward, kneeling beside them. He reached out hesitantly and touched his son's back. "Leo." "It's Daddy. Can you say Daddy too?" But the boy only clung to Elena tighter. "Mommy," he whispered again, his small voice stronger this time. Adrian's hand faltered mid-her. He forced a smile, though his throat felt tight. "It's okay, son. It's okay." Elena met Adrian's gaze, her own heart breaking at the look in his eyes. I'll give you two a moment," Adrian said hoarsely, rising to his feet. He left the room quickly, his footsteps fading down the hall. Elena held Leo close, rocking him gently. "You're so brave, Leo," she whispered. So brave. But her heart ached as she thought of Adrian walking away. She didn't know what hurt more, the way Leo had finally spoken, or the look of quiet devastation on his father's face. The mansion was quiet again that evening. But this time, it wasn't the cold, heavy silence that usually filled its halls. Adrian stood in his study, staring out the rain-streaked window. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, his tie loosened, his face lined with emotion. He couldn't stop hearing it, Mommy. The word echoed in his mind like a bittersweet melody. Adrian wasn't angry, not with Leo, not with Elena, but a part of him ached deep in his chest. I couldn't reach him. And she did. He didn't know if he should feel grateful or heartbroken. Soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Come in, he said hoarsely. Elena stepped inside, her dress slightly wrinkled from hours spent comforting Leo. In her arms, the little boy slept soundly, his small face pressed against her shoulder. Adrian's gaze softened at the sight. How is he? He cried himself to sleep, Elena whispered. But he spoke again before he drifted off, just once. Adrian nodded, swallowing hard. He called you Mommy again? Elena hesitated, then nodded. Yes. The room went quiet except for the faint sound of rain. Elena. Adrian began, his voice low and thick with emotion. I've been thinking, maybe it's time you stepped away. Her eyes widened. Stepped away? You've done so much for him, Adrian continued, his hands clenching at his sides. But maybe I've leaned on you too much. If Leo keeps clinging to you like this, I'm afraid he'll never connect with me. Elena's throat tightened. You think I'm hurting him? No. Adrian shook his head quickly. No. You're helping him in ways I couldn't. But he calls you Mommy. I can't. His voice cracked. I can't take that from him. And I can't take you away from him either. I don't know what the right thing is anymore. Elena looked down at the sleeping boy in her arms. Leo doesn't see me as a replacement, Adrian. He sees me as safety, that's all. But I'm his father, Adrian said softly, almost to himself. And I couldn't give him that safety. Elena crossed the room and placed Leo gently on the couch, covering him with a soft blanket. She turned back to Adrian, her eyes glistening. You're giving him the most important thing, she said. You stayed. You didn't run when it got hard. That matters more than you think. Adrian looked at her, his jaw tightening. Why do you care so much? Why didn't you just take this as another job? Elena hesitated. Her own walls threatened to crumble. Because I was Leo once, she whispered. I lost my mother young. I know what it feels like to be small and scared and silent. No one noticed me until one teacher refused to give up on me. I promised myself I'd do the same for someone else one day. Adrian's breath caught. He saw her differently, now not just as the nanny who had reached his son, but as a woman carrying her own wounds and still choosing to love, Elena. He began, his voice thick, but before he could finish, a small sound interrupted them. Daddy. Both of them froze. Leo was sitting up on the couch, his wide brown eyes blinking sleepily. Daddy, he whispered again, his tiny voice shaking. Adrian's heart stopped. Leo, you said. Leo stretched out his small arms. Daddy. Adrian's knees hit the floor as he rushed to the boy. His strong hands trembled as he gathered his son into his arms. I'm here, buddy, he choked out. Daddy's here. Leo's little fingers gripped his sweater tightly. Mommy, Daddy. Adrian glanced at Elena, his eyes wet. You're safe now, Leo, Elena whispered, kneeling beside them. Both of us are here. You're not alone anymore. Adrian cradled his son, his voice breaking. You saved him. Elena shook her head. No, he saved himself. He just needed someone to see him. Adrian looked at her then, and something passed between them, something unspoken but undeniable. For the first time, The cold walls of the Carter mansion didn't feel so heavy. It felt like home. Asterisk.
Sometimes the family we need finds us in the most unexpected ways. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional, inspiring tales. And tell us in the comments, what would you do if you were Adrian? Would you see Elena as just a nanny or his family?